Hello and welcome to FML Fund My Life, a podcast brought to you by MyWallSt. So, Henry, how are you today? How's
I'm
your
pretty
week?
good. It's been a bit of a long week. It was a big news week this week in finance and business. How did you take it?
Yes. It was. I just feel like if I have to tweet one more time about Elon Musk buying Twitter, like I'm literally gonna explode. I was actually getting like so bored of it myself. I even put it as our Instagram story today, being like, "Is anyone else fed up with this story?"
Yeah, he is good for kind of keeping news headlines, I suppose. But that's part of his brand. Like that's why Tesla's stock is so high. But it does get tiresome. So
But like, why do you really think he wants to buy it? Like,
oh, I think because people make memes about him, and I think he's unhappy about it. But we can talk
really?
about that. Yeah, definitely. He's not great for taking criticism, but sure we can talk about that later in his hijinks.
Okay, roll the music. Okay, so you're very welcome to the second episode. Can't believe we're already on the second one. We're really in the midst of it now, Emery.
I know there's no backing
Um,
out.
so my name is Nicole, and if you didn't catch our first episode, I'm the social media manager here at MyWallSt. And with me today again is my lovely co-host, Anne-Marie. He might recognize from Stock Club and is one of our investment analysts.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you for having me on again. Oh, I don't know. I don't think are we co-hosting, so no one is having anyone else on. This is a mutual
That's
hosting.
true. Yeah. So like I don't really have to say every time with me today is my co-host, do I?
I kind of like that I'm being introduced. It makes me seem important.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do. I think
Yeah,
James does that in Stock Club, no?
he does. Yeah, but yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, but
Keep it as it
sure.
is.
I'll just copy James.
There we go. Perfect.
um, so this episode about the Becky ETF, which you actually found when you were scrolling TikTok a few months ago, I remember we were kind of
Yeah.
talking about it. So this episode is going to be about the Becky ETF and the importance of buying what you know. And then we're also going to discuss what stock we would pick if we were starting our portfolio again from scratch. So busy agenda. Let's get right into it. So yeah, you came across the Becky ETF like I remember you messaged me on Slack a while ago, and was
Yeah.
TikTok the first place you came across it?
Yeah, it really was. It was a girl who was kind of doing an investigative report on it. She was making an educational video about it, and she was kind of just covering what the Becky ETF was, what stocks were in it, what was included. And her kind of point for introducing this to the broader world was she was talking about how investing could be quite easy for women because the whole point of the Becky ETF is to find stocks and companies that women love and invest in them and kind of see how it does. It was started out really as a hypothetical, and if we want to go back to the beginning of the Becky ETF, we actually have to go back to the Harvard Business Review in 2009, if you can believe it or not,
Mhm.
to a
Mhm.
study called The Female Economy by Michael Silverstein and Kate Sayer. And they're economists who explored how marketing often fails to target women despite them being key to sales. And I know that kind of sounds crazy because we're used to seeing female centered advertisement for products that are made exclusively for women. But when it comes to
Mhm.
more generic things like cars and homeware and stuff like that, it just tends to be more targeted towards men. And that was quite interesting because they found that women actually make the decision to purchase 94% of home furnishings, 92% of vacations, 91% of homes, 60% of automobiles, and 51% of the consumer electronics. So even though they might have limited buying power, like even though they might have a less income, because they're often in these family units, they're the ones calling the shots. They're the ones picking out what style or brand that they want. And so
Yeah.
this led Silverstein and Sayer to identify the 6 key industries where women could lead spending trends in the coming decade. And someone basically said, hey, why don't we begin to invest like how women spend their money? Why aren't we looking for these companies?
The one that surprised me there is 91% of homes.
Yeah, 91% homes. But it does kind of make sense because if I think back to when we moved when I was a kid, it
Mm.
was like definitely my mom making the decision of she was kind of looking at all the key areas of the home that
Mm.
were going to be most important, like like the kitchen, for example. Like there are so many
Mm.
nuances to a kitchen that you need to take into consideration when buying a house. And I do think she was seemed to be the one calling the shots. What do you think?
That's super. Yeah, like all the rest makes sense. Like definitely the furniture, vacations, like
Yeah.
100%. But the home one, I thought because it's such like a massive investment, I would have thought it
Yeah.
was closer to 50-50.
Yeah.
But
No,
I think women do have the final say. And then of course it's like probably maybe more women buying on their own now as well. There's probably that coming into play.
yeah, definitely. I think that actually the one that took me back was 60% of automobiles because we tend to
Mm,
think of like car guys, guys who, invest, who want to, buy luxury cars, are really interested in certain brands. And you think that they'd be the ones spending the money, making the decisions, but actually 60% of automobiles. And again, I think it's us underestimating the family unit and underestimating couples and kind of what dynamics change and what goes on behind the scenes. It very much reminds me of they used to talk about in the 1950s, while the vast majority of women in the United States, for example, were at home and their husbands were out earning, it was often the woman who
mm,
was at home, like balancing the family checkbook and figuring out where all of their money was going. So she actually did have a lot of spending power when it came down to it,
mm,
even though it wasn't her money to earn. So
yeah.
it's very interesting to see that trend kind of continue now into the 21st century and
Mm,
really dictate what businesses rise and fall in the United States.
mm. Yeah, and it kind of drops then when it goes to electronics. That's also
Yeah.
quite surprising. That's much more even.
Yeah, kind of. I suppose people tend to buy electronics for themselves. Like
That's true. Mm,
that's probably encompassing phones, stereos, televisions would probably be the only thing where there's a bit of
mm,
debate. But even then, I mean, there's not that much variety in TVs. But um,
yeah.
yeah, so this was kind of an idea that someone had, and it was and it actually was an idea that someone on Reddit had, if you'll believe it or not. So this study done by Silverstein and Sayer went on to kind of find out what women are the most important when trying to track where consumer spending is going to go. And so they broke down women into four groups, I believe it was, or actually six spending groups, sorry. And this was based upon their marital status and their economic standing and how much money they basically had to spend. And at the top of this table was a group of women called the fast trackers. And these women were economic and educational elites who could be single, married, with or without children. And they're like the lifeblood of this movement. They're the soul cycle riding, Lululemon wearing, Starbucks drinking, high earners that keep the lights on at Erewhon, which I learned is a very fancy grocery store with a smoothie bar. I learned that this week. People were talking about it on TikTok. I was like, I have no idea what this is, but it's a
That's in
Manhattan
America
grocery
only, is
store.
it?
Yep, only America. Yeah.
Mm.
And so these women, for lack of a better word, are Becky. And some think that she is basic, and I guess that's fair enough. But from a financial perspective, she is very powerful. Becky's make up
Yeah.
24% of the female population in the United States, yet they control 34% of female purchasing power. So they have more money than you would expect, and that means that they are very good at dictating consumer spending trends.
Yeah, that all makes sense, but I really don't like the whole thing of like calling women who like popular things like
Becky,
basic and
yeah.
average. I just think like, women can't do anything now, without saying like, oh, sorry, I like popular brands, but like they're popular for a reason because
Mm,
they're usually good. Or like say
yeah.
Lululemon, like like I've never worn them, but I've heard like really good things. I do like Starbucks. Maybe it's because I'm a bit basic as well. So but but yeah, but I think like even on the flip side of that, like now when girls don't like basic things, they're called
Mm,
pick me girls. So,
yeah.
the whole thing is like women, we can't like they can't do anything really. You're gonna get called
Yeah.
something.
Regardless of where you spend your money, you will be grouped into a derogatory basic girl name.
Mm,
So
yeah.
yeah, there's really no winning here. But do you know who is winning? Is Becky when it comes to financial power, apparently.
Go Becky,
So
go.
there we go. Um, so if we go back to these Redditors, these people who kind of read this study and began to have some ideas, they decided to design a theoretical fund based around Becky, or at least where Becky spends her money. So they selected stocks that they thought were popular with high earning, single, married, retired women. And this is a hot debate. There's a lot of discussion going on. If you're interested, go to Reddit, type in Becky ETF and see what comes up. I found one kind of Reddit thread where people argue that there are 72 Becky stocks, and that's a lot of stocks. That's more stocks than you should probably have in a fund.
Mhm.
But I figured, why don't we make our own Becky fund? So I
Oh.
went ahead and I picked 10 of the most common Becky stocks that I saw listed across various Reddit threads. And then I kind of cross referenced them with the MyWallSt shortlist. And so we can today introduce the Becky X MyWallSt fund, which features 10 stocks, and they are, everyone pay attention, get your pens and paper. It is Apple, Chipotle, Etsy, Facebook, Lululemon, Netflix, Pinterest, Peloton, Shopify, and Starbucks. And so I took these 10 stocks and I created a fictional portfolio in which Becky placed $100 into each of these stocks when they first joined the MyWallSt shortlist. Some of them, and I'll actually say most of them, were on the shortlist when MyWallSt launched. So this made the portfolio about 7 years old. And the total return in that time for Becky and her $100 in each stock was 306%, which is pretty good considering the current dislike of growth stocks. I mean, Netflix was hammered this week. And the S&P 500 in the same amount of time only returned about 157%. So you are doubling the market average there.
Wow. That's some serious homework you did there.
I did, yeah. I had to go onto Yahoo Finance and I had to go back and put in all the stocks and then go back to I had to cross-reference it with the date they went into MyWallSt. And then I had to go and Google how much the stocks were worth on that day. It was a tremendous amount of work, but I'm glad to see that it paid off. 306% is, it's nothing to laugh at.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed.
Some big names on that list, like Apple, Etsy, Lululemon, Netflix,
Pinterest. Kind of obvious names, to be honest. Like nothing too shocking. Like we didn't go and dig up a bunch of, brands operating in a space that you might be unfamiliar with. Like this is not biotech. We did not go and find a pharmaceutical company that might be developing some wonder drug. No, we went and found companies that people like. Some of them have done well. Some of them maybe not so well. As you can see, Peloton made the list. We were talking about them on the last episode. But most importantly, like some of them outperformed the market and they were able to bring the whole fund up. And so I think it's kind of an important lesson for people that investing can quite literally look like a list of places that you spend your money and a list of products that you like. And yeah, I think it's a nice takeaway for all of the newbie investors out there.
Yeah. And that's like one of our golden rules is to invest in what you know. So this is like a perfect example of people going and finding the research. Then you even like tailor it to the MyWallSt shortlist and shows that it does work.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's that idea of have a look at the MyWallSt shortlist and pick the names that you know and love, and that is a pretty good starting point, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, like when we were talking about companies you love and you use all the time, like the first stock that came to my head for me personally was like Olaplex. Because like if you know me, like I never stop going on about this company.
There's a reason it's on the MyWallSt TikTok every other week.
It is because you know what? The first time we made content about that, like we weren't even on TikTok that long, but our post started doing really well, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." And I remember, I think like I made a TikTok basically, telling people like the kind of risks of investing in a stock on its IPO day. But I use like an Olaplex joke about like, it's the same as like you could be as sad as spilling your Olaplex down the drain, which was a joke going on TikTok at the time. But yeah, and then it's just but that just shows it's such a popular product on social media, and that's how it's actually grown. I think it has like loads of its users making all this great content that actually forms part of its like marketing strategy. But when I think of like a company that I was genuinely excited to invest in because I love it so much, it was Olaplex. And like it could be like I think in a few years it might have been considered like a perfect addition into this like Becky ETF because it is kind of like what you would associate like a basic girl investing in.
May I ask before we go further, what is the Olaplex product suite? Like pitch me this company, like why should I buy their shampoo?
Well, see, you've never dyed your hair, have you?
No.
Yeah, so I think you're out.
You said that like, yeah, I knew it.
I knew it. Yeah, you're au natural. But no, I think it is mostly for girls who like dyed their hair. So like as you can tell, like if you're watching this podcast, yeah, like I'm dark haired, but I used to be blonde. So when I bleached my hair, like it just ruined my hair like so bad. And that like my sister used to always rave about Olaplex. But basically it just like builds your bonds back. So like it's not like a normal hair care product that basically just makes the outside look good. It makes the inside like repair, which will actually make your hair look better in the long term. And it is such a good product. But and I think that's why it was like so popular when it went on the public market like last October. went public via IPO. And yeah, you saw like so many of its fans on social just became so excited at the opportunity that they could finally invest in this company. I think, yeah, like in the first month, the stock went up like 20%.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and then that's when we kind of like started making videos about it, and we kind of like were paying attention to it more. And yeah, like I remember I said, like, I pointed out that, you know, it's not like that not that wise to invest on its first day because you don't know what will
Yeah,
happen to the stock. Like one of my
exactly.
Wall Street's rules is that we like to wait for the company to release at least 2 earnings reports as a
Mhm,
public company so you can really like see the financials.
mhm.
And yeah, like now 6 months later since it's gone public, the stock is down almost 40%. So yeah,
Yeah.
you would have been right. You should take my advice, guys, on TikTok. Don't you shouldn't
Y
invest it on its
Don't
IPO day.
invest in IPO day. That's I guess it's for a couple reasons. I mean, there tends to always be a lot of excitement. Like, as you were talking about, there was a huge explosion
Mm,
on social media the day it went public, and for in some ways, that was a good thing because it was all these women, a lot of which were maybe women who'd never invested in anything before, were suddenly had this interest because they were like, "Hey, I love this
mm,
product. I wanna own a
mhm,
small part of this business." So I think that was really nice to see, but then at the same time, like, that excitement then translates into the stock being pushed higher than is maybe
mhm.
reasonable. And so we like to
Yeah.
give those 6 months as a kind of cooling off period to kind of allow that excitement
Mhm,
um, to fizzle out. The other thing I will say about waiting after IPOs that I think is important is oftentimes companies are IPOing for a reason.
mm,
And like in most normal circumstances, a company is IPOing because they want access to additional funding to do X, Y, and Z. Oh, we're going to use this IPO opportunity to raise money to do this, to expand into another country, to build a new product line, to do more research, blah, blah, blah.
mhm,
Sometimes, though, we will get IPOs that we like to call IPOs of opportunity, which is a company has realized that they're in a bit of a hype cycle or people are really excited about them. And they want to take advantage of that moment, their kind of moment in the sun, to IPO and get a bunch of extra money into the business.
mhm.
And so by waiting those 6 months, you kind of get to really weed out the IPOs of opportunity and figure out who's taking advantage of a time and who is a player that has really thought this through and is really ready to be a public company and take advantage of the funding that comes with it.
Yeah, and I think Olaplex has been such a good example of why you should wait,
Oh
because
yeah.
in those 6 months, like, a few things have happened. The first is that it's been, you know, the subject of a massive scandal, and that one of its ingredients
Mm.
was linked to causing infertility in rats. And like I remember reading about it because I was like, oh, like I use this every week. Like I better like check. Um but apparently it was kind of overblown. Like they found it, like it was like a really small chance of it causing infertility in rats. So like how much could the damage be to humans? But obviously when people hear that, it's scary, you know, and
Mhm.
it is just a hair product. Like why would you risk, you know, putting that on your hair if you did want to have children? Like it's a
Yeah.
serious thing. That did
Yeah.
like a lot of brand damage to the
Mhm.
company. And I remember like Rory actually wrote like a detailed insight on Olaplex stock, and he even said like that a risk is, you know, invest in a company that relies so much on its brand reputation, because one
Yep.
thing could just take it away, and like, you know, this kind of has.
Mhm.
So it's scary. And another thing that has happened for Olaplex is it's a massive competitor has came around. Like it's I found out on TikTok like only like a month ago. It might have been
Mhm.
around for a bit longer, but everyone would expect that like it's a massive company like L'Oreal, but it's actually just this smaller company. It's the product is called K18, and people are saying that it's like 10 times better than Olaplex. It's relatively the same price as well. So loads of
Ooh.
people are making like, you know, videos saying like, yeah, I'm switching from Olaplex to K18. And like that's gonna make everyone wanna like, oh well, like I won't buy Olaplex next time. I'll
Yeah.
try something else. And even though I love Olaplex, I am still thinking I probably will try that one next time
Yeah.
and not buy Olaplex. So like
Yeah.
it's just dangerous because, you know, the company hasn't been around that long. And yeah, and I also want to mention that Olaplex still had actually a really good second earnings report. So if you were going by just
Mm.
that, like the stock is suffering even though its recent earnings
Yeah.
report was solid. So like it brought in
Mhm.
almost $600 million in the fourth quarter. US
Mhm.
sales grew 131% from the year before, and
Yep.
international sales were up almost 100% as
Yeah.
well. So it's tricky, and it also shows that, you know, you just have to
Mm.
be careful before investing in a company and do your research.
Yeah, I think it is probably also worth mentioning that the current period that we're in right now, because of the market, because of, a
Mm,
number of socioeconomic factors that are going on, we have seen pretty much across the board, any company that has IPO'd in the last year is
yeah.
pretty much down from from
Mhm,
the price it IPO'd at, and that just seems to be a general distaste of new businesses right now. People seem to be moving money into old tech, into brick and mortar retailer, kind of
mhm,
tried and true things. People are getting a bit more conservative. Everyone's a bit nervous because of inflation and
mhm.
stuff like that, and that's all reasonable. So I would argue that that is another factor
Yeah.
that's impacting Olaplex's stock. But I really like that you kind of went back and were able to contrast, this short-term growth, this short-term opportunity. Oh, hey, like this company is performing really well this quarter. But then the
Mm,
factors that you proposed in maybe Olaplex isn't a great investment were much more long-term. And it had the
mm,
much further like long-term mindset. Like thinking about the fragility of a brand is so important when you're trying to determine if a company is going to be around and be successful in 5 to 10 years. And so I think
mm,
bringing that up is really worthwhile, particularly in the case of this stock, which is quite reliant on like a single product or in a single group of products. It's just hair care, not to disparage the good people of Olaplex, but
mm.
like they don't have like
Yeah,
they're not diversified into something else. So like, oh, if
yeah.
their shampoo business dried up one day, they could say, oh, it's okay, we also do body wash or lotion or cleanser or something like
Mhm,
that. And so that, I guess, is just another risk to consider. I have a question about Olaplex, which you may or may not be able to answer, but maybe as a user you can, which
mhm,
is kind of from a moat perspective or maybe a quality of product perspective. Do they
mm,
have like a bunch of kind of research and development behind the hair care products that, like, make them better? Like, is there something, like,
mm.
chemically that it's like, "Oh, this is better than regular shampoo," or is it mainly
Yeah.
branding? I just, like, where's the kinda line there is what I'm curious about.
Yeah, no, it definitely is better than normal, like, shampoo and conditioner because it kinda, like, fills in the breakage in your hair
Mm,
follicles. So, I think it like, they call it bond build technology, like, and their hair care products, like, you wouldn't even associate them with shampoo and conditioner, even though they do have shampoo and conditioner and stuff, but, like, their main product is something else, like, and they have, like, leave-in conditioner, they have oils as well.
is it?
So
So, hang on, do you shampoo and
yeah.
condition and then also use Olaplex? It's
No,
like
I
an
don't.
additional thing.
I did use the shampoo and conditioner, but I just found the number three is it the hair protector. That's the best, and I
Okay.
do really
Yeah.
like their leave-in conditioner and their oils as well. But
Huh.
yeah, like it still is a really good company, and the products are
Mhm.
great. So I wouldn't like say, oh, definitely, like it's if you love Olaplex, like, and you really want to invest in it, that's fine. Like it's one to keep an eye on, I'd say, as a
Mhm.
long-term investment. And like this K18 one, it might not be as good as it happens. And it's still like the market for beauty is massive. So,
Yeah.
two people can live at the same time. And there will always be people that prefer one thing over the other and work better for your hair because every hair is different.
Mhm.
So I'd say like if you really love Olaplex, it's definitely like it's not the safe. It is still a bit risky play, but it's not
Mm.
dead in the water at all. Like
Mhm.
so it's
Would you
interesting.
be would you be a bit worried in terms of Olaplex as an investment versus maybe a more diversified beauty company? I because
Mm,
you asked me to, very barely looked at Estee Lauder, which is a company I think like people tend to think of like, oh, Estee Lauder just as the cosmetics brand, but Estee Lauder is a holding company. It owns a bunch of other
mm,
brands. I think it owns something like 45 or 50, like a lot of brands. Like we were talking about The Ordinary, that's owned by Estee Lauder. Bobby Brown is
yeah.
owned by Estee Lauder. Um, what is it that the Lobo, that really expensive
Mhm,
perfume company, they produce
yeah.
perfumes for like a tremendous amount of like stylists in the United States. They own like Ralph Lauren and Calvin Klein's perfume brand and that type of thing. And so I suppose Estee Lauder is not like a super glamorous company because it's a slow moving stock because it owns so many
Mhm,
different brands. Like even though like The Ordinary is doing really well right now, it might have exponential sales growth. Being weighed down then by like, I don't know, sluggish growth from Bobby Brown or something like that.
mhm.
And so I guess like would you be thinking maybe I'll balance buying Olaplex with maybe something like Estee Lauder, or maybe not even something in beauty, just like a big,
Mm.
slower moving stock,
Yeah.
just in case like, I don't know,
I
Olaplex
think
is
I think yeah, I think you answered my question there. I would say that, if you're really interested in beauty, go for something like Estee Lauder. I would be
mm,
more inclined to invest in that. I think it's a lot safer.
yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with, throwing a little bit in a more riskier
Yeah.
smaller company like Olaplex, because
So long
that's
as
where
you're
you can
kind of
really see the
balanced, I
growth.
suppose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the beauty of having a diversified portfolio, is you can have these little riskier
Mm.
ones. You're like, no, you know what? I do love this company.
Yeah.
I'm gonna back it, but I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna I'm gonna back it and keep an eye on its like earnings reports and keep an eye on its competitors and things like that. But yeah, I would probably be. I actually don't invest in any beauty yet, but
Mm.
I will be more likely to invest in Estee Lauder. It's
Yeah.
got some great brands. The Ordinary is kind of like the Olaplex of skincare to me.
Yeah, at the minute, yeah.
Mm,
I was watching a thing about Estee Lauder recently because Bobbi Brown, she sold her skincare company to Estee Lauder 25 years ago. And part of
mm.
that deal was she had to sign a non-compete clause and she was not allowed to make another cosmetics brand for 25 years. And her contract just ended. And so she is now developing a new skincare brand and she's trying to launch it almost exclusively through TikTok, through marketing. And so now if you go on TikTok, you can follow little Bobbi Brown and she's just like doing little makeup tutorials for her new products. And I thought that that's so interesting to watch,
Let's go.
you know, like a one of the greats from cosmetics kind of start again and try and rebuild a brand. And
Mm.
and yeah, I think that'll be a really interesting journey to follow. Um, Also, we should say that as of right now, neither Olaplex or Estee Lauder have made it onto the MyWallSt shortlist, but maybe they will someday. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Get a MyWallSt account.
Keep keep it tight. Yeah, nice plug. Nice plug.
Thank you.
So yeah, talking about kind of like investment products we know and love, they were
Mm.
kind of like some of our first investments. Like I know
Yeah.
Netflix was mine, and then I was talking about how that was my first stock I bought, and then recently Netflix is just in trouble, basically. Not in trouble, but the stock's in trouble.
Yeah, it was a bad day. People got a bit they got a bit upset. I would say some of the kind of sell-off was really triggered by they had very high expectations because of the pandemic. They added so many
Mm,
subscribers and then they didn't have a great they had for the first time ever negative subscriber growth and it really meant
mhm.
that some people on Wall Street they were like that's it. It's the end of days. Like Netflix will be bankrupt
I
by
know,
next week. They were very
I
easy to
know,
throw it all away.
I know. But this happens, and like this is also like a great example of like just blocking out the news sometimes.
Mm.
Like it is like it's obviously something to keep an eye on. Like if they continue to report like negative, like a subscriber loss,
Mhm.
that's bad. But
Yeah.
like, it hasn't changed my long term thesis on it. Like I still like know they make really really good content.
Mhm.
Um, but like I'll definitely, it shows that you need to check it back in with your long term investments.
Yeah, I would say it has kind of changed the maybe one of the key performance indicators because I wrote about Netflix like 6 months ago and my kind of main argument for loving it wasn't even necessarily the subscriber growth, it was the content brand that they were building. I
Mm,
was almost going to say oftentimes when we talk about Disney, one of the things that we say about them is the brand or the brands that they control
mm,
are worth so much money. And I was kind of like I think Netflix is getting to that point where like if you know something has been produced by Netflix, you know it's worthwhile. And they've done a really nice job bringing a diverse number of stories from all across the world from all these different creators.
yeah.
And I really like the idea that like a business that makes money like that could be successful. And so yeah, I'm kind of the same. Like I'm like not ready to give up on Netflix. I think they're a very innovative company. Like they quite literally invented the streaming market. I know that they're moving
Yeah.
into gaming and all these other things. So I'm kind of excited to see where they go. But definitely it's a slightly more risky stock than it was. It's not this like big assumption of success, but I still love it. I still have a soft spot for it.
Hmm. So then, if you were to start investing all over again, would you change the first stock you bought?
Maybe, yeah. So you chose Netflix. I
Mm.
chose Slack, which we talked about a bit, and it's communication tool for businesses. I
Hmm.
think my biggest flaw with picking Slack was that it's a very small company. It still is, like it's been acquired, but was very small, very early days. And because it was a small company, it was a small stock, it was a small cap stock, which small cap stocks tend to be more volatile, more risky and also, like, it's a real David and Goliath story. Slack was going up against Microsoft. Like, that's no big feat. And because it was very volatile in those days, it did kind of ruin my confidence a bit. So I think if I, could go back in time, I think I probably would have started off with something bigger and more stable just to kind of, I don't know, get my sea legs, as one of my uncles would say, just kind of dip your toe in a bit more, not to kind of jump straight into the deep end. I think that would be my temptation. And so I think I would have gone either big tech, like maybe Apple,
Mm.
or I have a real soft spot for a stock called Costco, which people make fun of
You
me
love
on
Costco.
the other podcasts so much. Every chance they get, they're like, "Let's mock Anne Marie's love of Costco," which I think is unfair because they treat their
Especially
employees
when
really
Rory loves Peloton.
Yeah, like, come on. And
Yeah.
the reason I love Costco is because they treat their employees really well. Their employees get comprehensive healthcare and a 401k, and despite them working in retail, their employees stay on average for like 9 years, which is unheard of, which tells me it's a really nice place to
Yeah.
work. And when we're
Yeah.
kind of in this really difficult labor market, I think that is a nice little investment. And it's a retailer, so it's not going to, grow 100% every year, but it grows really consistently. And I
Mhm.
think that would have been a nice foundation to start my portfolio with. Also, I've been going to Costco since I was a kid, so it was like a place I'm familiar with. I really like it. They have free food samples. It's
But
great.
yeah, I'm kind of surprised they're not in the Becky ETF.
I know, but like is Becky
Or
that is a good point.
is Costco too cheap? Like, is Costco more affordable?
She is well, yeah, it's a big box retailer. It's like whole thing
Mm,
is you pay a membership fee and then you pay for everything at cost, like which is kind of a
yeah.
brilliant little business model. But I don't know. You do see some Escalades parked outside Costco's. I think Costco is for everyone, to be honest.
Nice. Nice quote.
Yeah,
Apple,
sorry.
I think, would have been mine.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I think it's just like compared to Netflix, it's got more diversified. Like, it's
Mm,
not just hardware like laptops and iPhones anymore. It's like
yeah.
streaming. It's the Apple Car is coming out soon. So I think
Mhm.
it's a lot more stable. But
Mhm.
obviously, my first probably investment should have been in the S&P 500. Like,
Yeah,
that would
we
have
did
been
have this
solid.
conversation that
Mm,
it's maybe because it's people tend to forget, I think. First
yeah.
day out the gate, getting into investing, you're excited, but I think kinda getting in the habit of just putting a bit of money into the S&P 500 is good. I would 100%
Mm,
agree.
yeah. It's just not as exciting. You're like, woo,
No,
first stock.
S&P
Where am I going to
500.
put my money? Food.
Yeah, but it's such a solid choice because at the end of the day, like, that is everyone's safe harbor. Just put
Mhm.
money in the entire market. There you go.
Yeah. But also in individual stocks.
Yeah, particularly
Plug.
if you're in your 20s.
um, so now it's time for our regular segments. So
Mm,
this week's Bet You Didn't Know is that there's actually a male version of the Becky ETF called the Chad ETF. I found this actually the TikTok you sent me at
yeah.
the end, and she kind of like it's funny because at the end she says like but Becky's better because women are have more of a spending like you mentioned. But I
Mm.
just thought it was funny that there's like a Chad ETF like on social. By the way, it's not a legit ETF, and it has companies like Ralph Lauren, Nike.
Girl Boss of the Week.
Good.
Finally, we come to our girl boss of the week, which this week, who is it, Anne-Marie? There's only
There
one option.
there can only be one, and that is, of course, the techno king of Tesla, Elon Musk.
Oh.
Elon Musk has to be the girl boss of the week because there is nothing more girl boss than promising to protect freedom by holding a corporation hostage. So, so if you didn't know, last week Elon purchased 10% of Twitter and then announced his plans to join the board of the company. This fell apart pretty quickly for a couple of reasons. One being he didn't properly disclose his position to the FEC. That is illegal. That's not great. And then another being some mild resistance to Elon's ideas from Twitter's existing board. Then, in a move that can only really be described as Farouk assault, like Elon decided that he was going to buy all of Twitter for $54.20 a share to help reestablish free speech on the platform. He subsequently made a formal offer to the company, and so far, Twitter's board is resisting it and has enacted a poison pill policy, which will prevent any one shareholder from controlling more than 15% of the company. If you want more on the specifics of that, Rory, our analyst, he just wrote about that in the MyWallSt app. Go ahead and take a look. And it's just a bit of a ridiculous situation, especially when we go
It
back
is.
and take a look at Elon's track record around free speech. He recently said that the way to know if you have true free speech is if someone you don't like can say something you don't like. But even Elon fails this mark. He had recently fired a Tesla employee who posted a video to YouTube that showed the Tesla Model 3 running into a traffic pylon when using their driverless software, and this software already existed on about 100,000 vehicles. So this employee was doing his due diligence and telling the world, but Elon didn't like that.
Oh yeah, when
So
it doesn't suit him.
yeah, so he laid him off. But you know what they say: if you don't like the conversation, buy the entire platform.
That's a good quote.
There you go. Yeah. So our girl boss of the week this week, it's got to be Elon Musk.
So that's a wrap. Thank you all so much for listening, and tune back in 2 weeks' time when we're going to be talking about the weird and wonderful world of NFTs. And we would also love if you gave us a follow on socials. You can find us on Instagram at Fund My Life Podcast, on Twitter at MyWallSt HQ, and on TikTok at MyWallSt. It's way too many
And-
ads there.
My bad. And finally, if you're ready to start your investing journey and are looking for resources, check out MyWallSt's Getting Started podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, or download the MyWallSt Learn app. Both are linked below. If you want access to our list of hand-picked stocks by our analysts and lots of other interesting finance and business content, download the MyWallSt app and create a free account today.
Thanks. See you next time.